Thank you for joining us this evening. We're just going to give a couple more minutes as people move into the webinar before we get started. Okay, it's 6:01, so in the interest and to be respectful of people's time, I think we'll get started. First of all, I just want to thank you for joining our public information session tonight on the Town Fuel Island project. My name is Michael Blanchard. I'm the town administrator here in Dover. And this is an important project to the town that will be before annual town meeting next Monday on May 4th as a capital item under Article 5 in the warrant. It will also be on the May 18th annual election ballot as a debt exclusion vote as well. The webinar this evening will begin with a presentation on the project, followed by a question and comment period for members of the public in attendance. Members of the public will be asked to keep their comments to 2 minutes to ensure we have enough time for everyone to participate who wishes to do so. While this project has been discussed publicly at numerous public meetings over the past 2 years, the Board of Selectmen felt it was important to hold a separate information session on this project, given the attention it has drawn, as well as the financial commitment it entails. I do want to just share now at this point in the presentation on the financial end, we do have good news in that the original estimate for this project was just north of $1.7 million. And I'm pleased that after a competitive bidding process, the total estimates have come in at just over $1.2 million. So a very significant savings of over $500,000. So very good news on the financial end of this project. I do want to note that this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our website as well as our social media channels for residents to watch who are unable to attend this evening. And there will also be an additional presentation on this project on the floor of town meeting. I'll now turn it over to our Director of Public Works, Kevin McCabe, who will introduce our presenters this evening.
Thank you, Michael. With me is Jesse O'Donnell from Weston and Sampson, and with that, we have a PowerPoint presentation we will transition to now.
Great. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Kevin. Just a quick side note before I forget, I'm accompanied by my colleague, Zach Wallen. I don't know if he's considered a panelist right now, so in the background for the next few minutes, if Mike, if you're able to get him on board, that would be helpful. No worries if it's not doable. But with that, I'll get started here. So good evening, everyone. My name is Jesse O'Donnell. I am a project manager with Weston and Sampson. We are the engineering consultant providing services to the DPW for this fuel system replacement project at the Town Garage DPW property in town. And I am going to share my screen with some of slides that I have created here. And I imagine my presentation will be about 10 minutes, and then we can answer any questions. So let me just share my screen. I think I just put in the request.
Should be all set.
Okay, so if that's live, I will get started here. Let's move to the next slide here. Okay, so I'd like to start off by orienting
Jesse,
everyone.
sorry to interrupt. We don't see. Oh, you have permission, but we don't see the slides.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. I have to request permission and then share. My fault. Let me get the screen shared here. Okay. Should take a few seconds and you should all be seeing the screen in a moment here.
All set.
All good? Thank you. All right, so I'd like to orient everyone here with a quick aerial image. In green is the town hall. Across the street lies the DPW property, and in orange is the DPW building. The existing fuel tanks on the site are located in yellow. They're right off to the front side of the building. And we are proposing to remove and replace those tanks with new fuel tanks that would be located in the rear portion of the lot, generally indicated where the red rectangle is. So on this slide at the top is an image of the existing fuel tanks. These are existing Convault tanks. They are steel tanks that are contained in poly encasements that are all encased in concrete, which is what we're seeing here. There is one diesel fuel tank and one gasoline fuel tank. They were installed back in '94, so they're 32 years old. Their general 30-year life expectancy and 30-year warranty have expired 2 years ago. And the age of the tanks is showing. Recent evidence of microbes forming on the internal tank surface has been noticed. These bugs or microbes form from trace moisture that just accumulates over the decades of these tanks being in existence. And they do have the propensity, the ability to corrode that inner steel tank where they tend to settle and accumulate at the bottom. So to fix this, Kevin noticed this and recently fixed these bugs in the fuel as they're colloquially referred to. So the fuel was the fuel was fixed and treated of the bugs. But old tanks with these microbe-induced corrosion features they're prone to leaks because if the bottom of that steel tank starts to corrode and corrodes through, fuel can leak through that and potentially get through any hairline fractures in the outer concrete encasement that may have formed in the 32 years that the concrete's been there, right? So, so our goal here was to proactively replace the tanks as soon as reasonably possible to avoid a costly environmental cleanup in the future. If any fuel was to leak out of these tanks and get into the soil or just to get out on the site externally, that could entail a large fee for environmental cleanup. So I'll pass it over to Kevin for a slide here to discuss operational impacts with the existing location of the tanks.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, so I just wanted to briefly touch on the site constraints that we have. Obviously, as you see, the largest piece of Dover apparatus in the fire department there. It's challenging in its current orientation to fuel, which the site constraints and selection will be. Jesse will touch in more detail on the next slide. We explored other options of looking to fuel locally. Currently now the town purchases fuel in a consortium bid. And so none of that would be reflected if we purchase locally, say a Dover Mobile or the closest diesel, which is close to 5 miles away in Medfield, which would roughly have an impact of around 25 minutes to fuel up each diesel apparatus, which is probably about 60% of the DPW and about 99% of the Dover Fire Department. Another thing we looked to engage in is if any of the surrounding abutting DPWs would entertain possibly a partnership for fuel. And we basically were faced with the same answer that they are essentially at capacity for their fuel storage and all that would be worried about shortages when we all need fuel the most at snow and ice operations.
Thanks, Kevin. So I'd like to discuss the project timeline, which Michael alluded to at the onset here. This project's been 2-3 years in the making. Back in June of 2023, Weston and Sampson issued a site feasibility report to the DPW. And in the meantime, since then, we've gone through 5 public meetings, 3 with the Planning Board, 1 with the Conservation Commission, and 1 with the Board of Selectmen. And we've received all the associated approvals. So the next step here is to go to the town funding vote at town meeting next week. I would like to take some time to discuss the design and layout of how we arrived at siting this fuel station in the rear portion of the site. While it typically doesn't make sense, we always take a look at replacing the fuel system directly in place. And as Kevin mentioned on this site, the existing fuel tanks are situated in such a way that requires vehicles fueling up to have to either back in or back out, which is an unideal maneuver, especially when you're faced with, the fire apparatuses or the big fuel tankers that deliver fuel to the site. So we were certainly trying to improve upon that condition. And then in addition, replacing fuel tanks in place understandably requires an interruption to fueling operations during construction, right? So during the 4 to 6 month construction process, temporary fueling would be needed, and it can be expensive and logistically challenging. Uh, and then last but not least here, the tanks as they currently sit are partially within an AT&T easement, which prohibits structures of the tanks sort. And they're also located within the town of Dover structure setback, partially within that setback. So by moving the tanks elsewhere, we would look to restore compliance with those conditions. So we ultimately elected to relocate the tanks to the rear of the site. In addition to getting the backing from Concom, Planning Board, and Board of Selectmen, we have the backing from the police and fire chiefs for this location. Um, we find it to be the best location for vehicular circulation and access. And importantly, the rear location keeps this critical fueling infrastructure away from a public-facing location. And that leads into the third area we assessed and elected not to choose, which was relocating the tanks south of where they currently are, closer to the Dunkin' Donuts next to the site. And as I mentioned, this area is not ideal um, because it's directly adjacent to the parking area on the site, which can get quite fully utilized and sometimes overflow. So it certainly wasn't Weston and Sampson's recommendation, nor the town's, to propose a fueling station closer to the frontage of the site next to an area that is, busily occupied by the public. Um, in addition, this area currently serves as a miscellaneous material storage area by the DPW, and it's not paved. So if we were to propose to locate the fuel system there and pave that area, it would add impervious area, which isn't necessarily aligned with the intent of the local stormwater regulations, especially on a site that has had flooding issues. So we're certainly trying to limit the amount of impervious area on this site. And the location that we chose in the rear portion of the site is already paved. Um, so I'd like to provide an image of what this system will look like. Here's an image of a recent project we had, which is a near identical configuration to what we're proposing here in Dover. As you can see, there is a canopy with fire suppression on the underside of it, automatic fire suppression. There would also be motion sensing lighting. There is a concrete pad that has the tank protected by a number of bollards, which you can see in yellow. The tank itself is a single split tank that has a diesel component and a gasoline component. And the vehicles fuel up on one side of the tank, so it's a one-sided fueling configuration. I'd like to go over a number of the safety measures and safeguards that are precisely engineered into these tanks. There's a lot of information here. These tanks obviously need to be very safe, so there's a lot of spill prevention and response measures to cover here. So first, I have the fire test. So essentially what this is the tank, as it's constructed, needs to withstand a 2,000-degree furnace to simulate a pool fire for 2 hours. It also needs to withstand a stream hose test in which the tank is sprayed with water at an incredible pressure to simulate like a fire event. The tanks also need to be struck by a 12,000-pound object traveling at 10 miles an hour. And lastly, there's a ballistics test where the tank is shot at 5 times from 100 feet away by a .308 caliber rifle, and those bullets cannot pierce the inner part of the tank. There's also some safeguards with respect to vapors and emissions here. So there's a vapor recovery system when the fuel tanker or fuel delivery vehicle comes onto the site to replenish the tank volume. It does so in such a way that the vapors are returned to the fuel delivery truck and not lost out to the atmosphere. Similarly, there's these certified pressure and vacuum vent caps engineered into the tanks to prevent vapors from escaping during normal operation. And this really started back in 1998. So these have been features that have been a mainstay for a while now. But to know the existing tanks were built in 94. So there's some features, that replacing these tanks will bring the new tanks into more of a modern compliance. And last but not least here, I'd like to show a number of safety features. There's more than a dozen additional ones here. I'd like to just go over several that I find to be worth mentioning on this meeting, but feel free to peruse all of them as I'm presenting here. The first is a continuous electronic leak monitoring system. This is an automatic leak monitor that is connected to DPW staff phones to provide notifications if a leak were ever to be noticed or detected. Now, that said, that's hopefully never really going to happen, right? But if it were to happen, there needs to be a leak monitoring system in place, certainly. So that will be implemented into the engineering. There's also the dispenser for the tank, a single dispenser. The hoses attached to that dispenser to dispense fuel into vehicles have these breakaway connectors. Essentially, if someone was to accidentally and negligently drive away, say, while their vehicle is being fueled up, the hoses would detach in such a manner that would shear off and not allow fuel to just kind of flow out externally, causing a spill. So that's a big safeguard that's helpful. I'd like to mention these catch basin mats that the Conservation Commission recommended we include on the site during fuel deliveries. Essentially, what they are proprietary products that the DPW will have on site to place over the storm drain grate that is down gradient from the fuel tank, so that if a spill ever were to happen, the catch basin mat would be intercepting that fluid rather than it going into the storm drain system. And then last but not least, I think I mentioned before, there's fixed automatic fire suppression proposed on the underside of the canopy of the fuel tank. So with all that said, that's the 10-minute or so presentation that we have for tonight, and we imagine there's a number of questions. So I'd like to turn it back over to Kevin and or Michael if you have any final comments before we extend it out to the residents joining tonight.
Thanks, Jesse. No, I appreciate that. I think you hit on every thing that we had talked about and hoped to present. So I think we'll open it up to questions and comments from the public in attendance. There was a few people that have joined just recently. So two things I just want to reiterate that I mentioned at the start of the meeting is one, this webinar is being recorded. So if you weren't able to catch the whole presentation, we will make this available on our website so that you can view it ahead of town meeting. And we'll also have an additional presentation made on the floor of town meeting. As I also mentioned, we will open it up in a second. We'll ask members of the public to please keep their comments to 2 minutes to ensure we have enough time for everyone to participate who wishes to do so. And lastly, you will see in the Zoom software a raised hand feature. If you could please use that raised hand feature if you're interested in asking a question or making a comment, and we will provide you with the ability to speak so you can do so. So we'll open up that now. And again, if anyone has any questions or comments, please use the raise hand feature and we'll allow you to talk. Jean, you should have permission to talk.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the presentation and the opportunity to share our neighborhood concerns once again with all of you. While I appreciate the presentation given tonight and the concerns about building away from the public-facing edge, away from the parking area, concerns about limiting impervious area, etc., I'm very disappointed that no mention has been made outside of some of the statistics regarding the safety of the tanks, et cetera. No mention has been made about safety, health and welfare of the neighborhood and the concerns that have been mentioned in the past. A few questions for you, and I'll list them all and then wait for a response. Can you please tell us what, if any, off-site alternative locations have been studied? And I ask that partially with concern for at town meeting, there'll be a proposal for an update to the town master plan. and considerations with the planning board for studying the DPW's current site, the fact that it's outgrowing that site, and this is a major component of that. Also, I appreciate that someone in town was able, through FOIA, to get some correspondence on this project. I raised two concerns related to that. One was questioning of the information being shared regarding the costs and benefits of this project, meaning the costs as shared with town residents in the information that's been distributed. That with respect to actual costs if the town was to look at an alternative temporary solution for obtaining gas elsewhere. And then reuse of the existing site once that can be replaced and utilized. Lastly, I just want to add that the visuals are quite shocking. It is looking like a small commercial gas station. I and others have asked at previous meetings if visual studies could actually be done from a distance from the road as you enter the DPW site, more importantly from the adjacent neighborhoods, so that the real visual impact of this can be shared with town residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean, for those comments. I appreciate those very much. I think the one specific question I think I heard, I was trying to take notes, was in terms of looking at alternative locations. So the town was mentioned during the presentation, did look at alternative sources and locations, such as using a private existing commercial gas station or partnering with a neighboring community. And for the reasons mentioned in the first, cost, and in the second, an inability for other towns to be willing to share a resource with us, those were not avenues that we could pursue. And so those were essentially, we felt, a dead end for us. In terms of other locations within the community, no, we did not particularly research other specific locations. I think that the feeling by the staff, our consultants, as well as the Board of Selectmen, is that this location is the existing Public Works facility. It is where not just this fuel island, but a past 4 or 5 fuel islands have been located. It's where the majority of our vehicles that need to be fueled are located. So we do think that this site does make sense. I certainly appreciate concerns of whether or not the facility or the use of the facility has outgrown. I think that's a much larger question, given the cost to replace a Department of Public Works facility. And that's certainly outside the scope of what we're talking about tonight, but I do appreciate your comments and hope that was at least a little bit helpful. We have another question by Kristen Daly Bartlett. And I think you lowered your hand, Kristen. So I don't know if you still have a question or if you want to. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Okay, you should have permission to talk now if you unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm sorry, Kristen Bartlett, 19 Church Street. I've just become aware of this recently. And my only question is, we are so far down the road, to my knowledge. Again, I was just made aware of this. You mentioned that it had been discussed for previous years. And have the residents abutting this project been notified in any way, shape, or form? 1. And 2, how did we retain Weston and Sampson to do this study so far? And do we have any referrals, references? And are we committed to that? I guess we're so far down the road and I'm coming in late. Is there a better way to just recap how we got to this? And it feels like right out of the gate, we're just looking to fix it. And I guess the residents abutting it are a little bit in shock. At least I am, because I didn't know anything about it. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I appreciate it. And Kevin can correct me, if I'm wrong. So I think first, in terms of the abutters, yes, abutters were notified throughout the course of this project, both in terms of the planning board process over the last 2 years as required. Butters are required to be notified by mail, and they were, and butters were and did participate in the series of meetings over the last 2 years. We also, during the selectmen's portion of this approval at the end of last calendar year, there was not necessarily a legal requirement to notify butters, but the selectmen chose to do that just out of an abundance of wanting to be transparent and that this was reaching that stage of approval. And again, butters did attend and participate in that Board of Selectmen meeting and vote as well. And then in terms of selecting an engineering firm, that's under the discretion of the department. So, Kevin certainly checks references, is aware of Weston and Sampson, as demonstrated. Jesse mentioned they've worked on other fuel islands, and they were the firm that was selected. There was a contract with them engaged and approved by the selectmen, and that's what brought them here and through this design process. So, again, I do appreciate your comments. Not every public meeting is, broadly advertised beyond what is legally required. All our meetings are posted, legally posted agendas. Things like this, this sort of information session, we certainly do more, advertise it on Facebook and email, but that's just not realistic for every kind of day-to-day meeting. So again, this has been discussed at numerous public meetings. Public did have the opportunity to participate, and abutters were directly notified. And then again, meetings like this where we're trying to call special attention to, we thought was appropriate and hope was helpful, even if it is a little late to the game, that people can be made aware of this. In addition to planning, conservation, and selectmen, it's also been discussed at Capital and Warrant Committee also throughout the last 2 budget cycles as well. So I hope that information helps answer your question. There's no name on this, but we have an iPhone. You should have permission to talk.
Thank you. My name is Christine Benson. I am an abutter, and I'm curious to know, has any abutter supported this proposal at all?
I am not aware, not to the best of my knowledge, but I'm not aware.
Okay, so with that in mind, I'm assuming the reason you notified the abutters is to let them know what's going on in the town, get them knowledgeable of what's going on literally in their backyard, and giving them a voice. And I have not seen any response to these objections, and there's been many over the last year or two for this event that you're proposing. And I do think we're at a point in a juncture where we do have to look forward to see where our town is going. And maybe it is a time that we look that we can't continue to build in this area. So maybe we start with this gas station, because it literally looks like a gas station, and start to move things away from the center of town, away from the neighbors, and look forward instead of saying, well, for the past 5 gas stations, this is what we've done. We all know that we learn through experience. We learn as the town grows, as the needs of the people are. And I don't think right now this is the time to put a gas station in the back of this town garage. I think you've put this big green building that covers the salt and sand, and I can see that 24/7. You put a brand new garage in there not too long ago to garage your trucks, and it's huge. We have seen that. I have also not seen an aerial of what this new garage will look like next to these buildings, to see what the whole structure will look like going forward. And then to that point, what's going forward? What's next? What is the town going to need next? And is there room there? Or have we just completely outgrown that space and it's time to reconsider other options?
Thank you very much for those comments. Appreciate that. We have Nicole Safarian. You should be able to talk now.
Hi, Nicole. I'm a direct abutter. I would like to know if there's been any studies on the potential impact to health and the environment living within 100 feet, or actually it's 75 to 90 feet of a gas station. It's extremely close And there's a lot of research saying that living next to gas station has a tremendous increase of leukemia and cancer. And I also would like to know what is slated to go in the current area, because you guys really seem gung-ho on not keeping it in the current area. So are there any plans to use that land that's in that current spot? And secondly, there is a berm there of grass in front of the DPW with a curb that could be removed for a lot less money to increase the availability for trucks to back in. And I was wondering if that was considered to modify the current location. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Appreciate that. So, Kevin, help me if I missed any questions. So one is, I mean, the town, I can quite honestly or directly say the town has not conducted any studies in terms of the health effects. I'm sure they do exist, but the town is not in a position to conduct those sort of studies. I do know that we're within all the legally required setbacks for a fuel island from property lines. So we are in compliance with state and federal requirements for that, but certainly no study has been conducted by the town. And then lastly, I appreciate your comment on in terms of moving that grass and curbing area. The access and operational access is one of many concerns of why we're suggesting the location or proposing the location be moved to the back. I don't know if that particularly has been looked at or if there are any issues with that. We'll certainly try to get an answer for you for that. But again, that is certainly, I don't want to misrepresent that that's the sole reason for proposing this goes to the back of the site. But certainly that is one, and I'll find out if that is a possibility. I do know we have a septic system in that area and other things, so I'm just not sure if that's even possible, but we can find out.
The leach field and the septic tank are in the front of the parcel in that line.
Thank you, Kevin. So I guess, we certainly can confirm and see if there's anything else to share, Nicole, but I think that is the answer then. We have Evren Gunduz. You should have permission to speak.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Great. My name is Evren. We are also abutters, and I have not, we've talked a lot as abutters, and I don't know a single abutter that supports this proposal. We're all vehemently against it. One of the things that we're concerned about is the traffic pattern, because as trucks enter the DPW now to get fueled, depending on what side of the truck their gas tank is on, the fueling cap, they'll either need to come around the building to the right, or they'll have to come around the building on the left side, right up against our properties. And no matter which way they come, whether in the left or the right, they're all gonna, if they come in the right, they're gonna have to circle back around on that left strip of pavement that abuts all of our properties. And so both coming in and out, trucks will be coming by our property, which is just a few feet from our house. We have a toddler, so we're concerned about the fumes and the noise from every single vehicle coming through our backyard. And currently there's only an 8-foot wooden fence, like a decorative fence that the town put up that blocks the properties from that strip of road that all those trucks are going to be going up and down. So one of my questions and big concerns is there going to be a replacement of that fence that's going to help with noise and fumigation pollution coming from those vehicles? Or are you going to keep the 8-foot decorative fence up? Thank you.
Thank you. So to the best of my knowledge, and Kevin, you correct me, I don't believe that the plan calls for.
There's no plans. The salt shed project replaced an existing 6-foot stockade fence, and as part of that project, we replaced it with an 8-foot stockade fence.
And then the other comment, just to address again, it doesn't address necessarily all of your specific comments about the concerns about the vehicle traffic. But we did hear that, particularly earlier in this process, there was a concern about vehicles refueling in the evening, in particular, and headlights and noise. So as part of this process, we are implementing a policy for our fleet that outside, obviously, of emergency conditions like storms, whether it be snow, wind, hurricanes, active fire responses, things like that. that we will limit refueling to business hour, DPW business hour operations. And so that hopefully, what those concerns about some noise or headlights at night will be alleviated to some degree, again, with the exception of emergencies and snows and things of that nature. Just want to give one more opportunity. I don't see, oh, here's a hand now. This is Danny Cook.
Hey, thank you guys very much for doing this. Just had a question about the existing location and then the unpaved area closer to the Dunkin' Donuts there. Seems to me like, or at least the first bullet point on the slide as to why not to keep it in the current location was around convenience and how it would be whatever inconvenient to have to back into the current spot. Have we considered or studied combining the unpaved gravel area next to the current location with the current location and demoing the current one and putting it over there so that nobody has to back in? Obviously, very concerned and sympathetic to everyone and others, as this will have a very negative impact on their properties, of course.
Appreciate that question, Danny. So overall, that front area was looked at. As was mentioned in the presentation, there's a couple concerns with that. So one is using the existing location and the increased costs. There's also some concerns about the material underneath that site as a result of potentially some rubble from the former factory there, making that a more difficult site to work with. And there's also some concerns with that unpaved area would become paved. And generally, we look to not increase impervious material. And so there's some concerns about looking to pave that area. And then lastly, as we said, operationally, the backing in and out is one of the concerns, but is not the only concern. We think that having it in the back is a good move operationally, but also having it away from the public, even where it is now, is not ideal. And certainly moving it closer to the front increases that potential access to the public. So we think having it behind the building makes a lot of sense for those purposes as well. I hope that helped answer your question a little bit. There was a couple other questions I just noticed. I apologize, the question and answering wasn't popping up for me. One was the number of residents on the Zoom. Right now we have 21. I believe at the highest I saw 24, but right now we have 21 participants, attendees on the call. There was also a question of how this was possible from a butter who had to work with conservation to build their house. It was highly regulated. And how can we do this? So to be clear, where the fuel island located now, as well as the proposed location, is not within the wetland setback area. We did go to Conservation Commission at the request of the Planning Board to get their and solicit their opinion and advice on how to best implement this project. And we did take that, but it was not actually a requirement because we are outside of that wetland setback. So I hope that answers that question. And then I believe
another existing factor we didn't talk about was the existing site is in the AT&T easement to our property, which actually prohibits a permanent structure. So that initially, right, we looked to replace it in the same site and kind of had to outweigh the pros and cons. So pushing it out shrinks our already narrow, basically one lane into the facility as it exists now.
Jean has another question or comment, Jean?
Yes, thank you for the second round. I appreciate it. I'm finding most of this conversation, especially by the town and your consultant, really dismissive of our concerns. You're going out to ask the town residents for almost $2 million. There's been a lot of concern shared about the movement of traffic and the inconvenience at the current location, concern for people who utilize Dunkin' Donuts of all things. I don't hear an equal concern for the health, safety, and welfare of the homeowners who are in a position much longer term than the people using Dunkin' Donuts or the inconvenience to the people at DPW with the traffic movements. I also just wanted to add regarding to some of my earlier comments, I was at no time suggesting that we should consider the cost of moving the DPW facility as a short-term solution. I do think there is a lack of due diligence regarding alternate locations off-site for the fuel station itself. I'll reiterate, considering that I know studies of the fire station area is underway or will be underway. The proposal again for an update to the town master plan. I know there's also a proposal for a climate action plan. It's really a critical time for the plan to, for the town to slow down regardless of the inconvenience to the DPW right away. It's an incredible opportunity to have everyone take a more holistic view of this. Our neighborhood has been the recipient, I think, of some short-term thinking rather than long-term thinking. And I will second that there is extreme concern by our extended neighborhood for this project. And regardless of the number of public meetings that have happened, I continue to think that we are being dismissed by the town. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. I am sorry you feel that way. I think, where we're at is, I appreciate the abutters do not want this project to move forward as currently proposed. I think the town has said that we do hear your concerns, but we still think this is the appropriate location, given all the factors we've discussed tonight. And I think, again, not to be, certainly no intention to be dismissive of your concerns. If you review tonight, a lot of the safety features, a lot of the things that are optional, such as the fire suppression system, is actually not required. But we heard that concern, and so added it to the project. Trying to be cognizant of how the trucks fuel and the hours they fuel to try to take into account some of your concerns. But I appreciate your comments. I do understand them. And perhaps, I think at the end of the day, we just don't completely agree in terms of, we do think this is the best location operationally for the community. And again, it's not just DPW, but it also is our public safety fleet, both police and fire as well, and ambulance. So, again, I appreciate your concerns. We do have another question from Kristen Daly Bartlett. You should be able to speak now.
Hey, sorry again. I'm listening to everything and I'm thinking this through. So long-term plan, if we were ever to get our walking trail back through that area, would that be kind of an eyesore as we're walking through this quote unquote bucolic Dover? Talk to a realtor, it's our favorite word. And our equine little community here. I don't know that that's going to really jive well. And where we've had Dunkin' Donuts have to adhere to our town, I thought again, we were going to a village town center now. Maybe we want to take something into consideration there to help the abutters be more comfortable with that. And then the other thing was, is it true that if this is just under 10,000 gallons, what is the existing gallon use that we have now? Because if you go over 10,000 gallons, does that start flagging other agencies such as conservation? I'm at a complete, I was the one that asked that question. I built a house on Church Street. I willingly moved the house out of conservation because I did not want any problems with my town. I love it. I love it for all the reasons that it respects the conservation. I can't get my head around how you guys can move gasoline closer to people's homes, closer to conservation area from where it is, and it's not raising any flags. It feels like there's a tremendous double standard that we, the taxpayers, will pay for this convenience so you don't have to back a truck in at the expense of our property values, of our lovely appreciation for this environment. And I gotta say, I just learned of this I'm with all the people that feel dismissed. It doesn't feel transparent or true to the fabric of Dover, which in my age bracket, we came here for the appreciation and the conservation of this town. And I get the efficiency and the safety has increased and we need it, but there has to be a better solution or at least a better communication because things do not add up. And again, I am just learning of this, so maybe other people have had time to marinate in this, but it's not coming across as true to Dover. That's all I have to say. I'm sorry.
No, please don't apologize. We're here to hear your comments, and I appreciate them. I think I don't know that you had a question there. I just think that the one thing I do want to take issue with is you felt this wasn't a transparent process, and I just want to be very clear again for anyone that may have joined. This has been a multi-year project at numerous public meetings. Abutters have been, directly notified, and in fact, this process I think is working the way a public process is intended to, which is it's now before town meeting. Town voters have an option to directly weigh in. They do that through the funding of this project. That is the way to either approve or disapprove of the project is to approve or disapprove funding. And information sessions like this for the general public, I think really help with that transparency. So I do appreciate your concern. I do take issue with that word only because I think we've tried really hard, and it has been a public process, including the fact that this was originally supposed to be taken up at last year's town meeting. We brought forward a separate issue regarding some bylaw amendments and talked about this. This was the reason those bylaws were being amended so that this project could potentially move forward. So I do very much appreciate concerns, but I do think this has been a very transparent process, and the process is working in my eyes as intended, and you're here now in town meeting, and the voters directly have an opportunity to weigh in on this project. And I hope you do, because this is how it is supposed to work. So I do appreciate that. We have iPhone, and I'm sorry I forget who this was, but I'll give you permission to talk. If you just say your name again.
Thank you, Christine Benson. So our only recourse now is to get as many people, townspeople, educated in a week or two, and show up at town meeting and vote this down. Vote the funding of this project down. Is that true?
Correct. So if the question is how does this project not move forward, and that is correct. It would not be, if it's not funded through the town meeting process, the project would not move forward. That's correct.
All right. So everybody on this call, you have your work ahead of you in the next week to get everyone you know in town to support the delay of this project, to consider other options going forward. I'm not saying that you don't need this gas station, but perhaps we should have other options available where the townspeople can choose and make decisions on what really is important to them, as well as the convenience of the town workers. But right now, our job ahead of us in the next week, 2 weeks, is to, or a week, I guess, is to go ahead and get as many people on board to help stop this project going forward.
Thank you for your comments. Justine has her hand raised. Go ahead, Justine.
Yeah, Mike, in the Q&A, I had some questions. Maybe you can address those.
Sure, let me just pull that up. Jesse, maybe this will be for you or Zach. The question is regarding the proposed fire suppression system and concern about the chemicals, including PFAS. That's the first question. Concerns about PFAS or other chemicals in the fire suppression.
Zach, do you have any thoughts on the PFAS component? I currently don't have any knowledge about that in particular, so we could certainly answer that after we provide some research, but unless you had something to offer.
No,
Zach.
not immediately here.
Okay. Yeah, I'll jot that down for sure.
Sure. And then Justine also asked to list other sites owned by the town of Dover that could house the gas station, Carroll Park, near the cemetery, the transfer station, etc. So that's not a list we have. I mean, the town assessor certainly can provide, and I think you can access online, a list of all parcels owned by the town. I appreciate, the question of other sites. I think a lot of the issues would remain the same. The soils, my understanding, are very similar at Carroll Park. We do have a drinking water well located there as well that serves the elementary school. The transfer station, despite the amount of land that looks like it's up there, a lot of it is not town land. We're pretty at the seams, I think is fair to say, Kevin, on the transfer station. So there would not be the facility to add this sort of fuel island there. But certainly we can clarify your question about the chemicals that are in the fire suppression system. I guess I do want to mention, I think these concerns are really important, both this and some of the others that have raised. But one of the reasons the town brought this forward, again, to clarify, it is not for the convenience of DPW workers, but it's a real liability to the town. As was demonstrated, these tanks are passively used through life. They are no longer in warranty. We've had conversations with our insurance carrier. They are covered, but there is a reality. At some point, there is concern from our insurance carrier of how long that continues now that they're out of warranty, that we have documented issues with, I think they're called diesel bugs, as Jesse said. And again, this new fuel island improves the protection to the environment and improves the protection to the surrounding homes that the current fuel island does not provide. And so, while we do believe the existing fuel island does have some of those concerns, we're hoping that with this new project, those will be addressed, as was kind of outlined in our presentation, of all the safety features that are in the system that do not exist in the current system, which is a great liability to the community. And so again, that's the main driver of why this project is coming forward. Justine, I think you have your hand raised. Sorry. Justine, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard this from me before, but our whole neighborhood, Haven Street, Haven Terrace, Church Street, down to Trout Brook, is down gradient from the storm drains and the mobile station massive spill in 1988 that took out our wells. Our private wells were contaminated by MTBE, a gasoline additive. It was caused by Mobil. It was not caused by the Dover town, I might add. However, our neighborhood is full of private wells. We are not on Aquarian water system, and we were knocked out. For years, we were on bottled water. I don't think anyone from the DPW has gone door to door to door to door to door to talk to all of us who are still around, who experienced that nightmare. Okay? So from my point of view, this is total arrogance that the convenience, and I do think it's a convenience of tanking vehicles, should trump, so to speak, the possible endangerment of our wells. And secondly, as I've said before at public meetings, the current location was chosen to be as far away from our private wells as possible. That's why it was chosen. And to have this, I don't know what to call it, this massive gas station plunked down next to our homes, frankly, within sight, between the salt shed, the cell tower, and now this gas station, it's an outrage. It's a moral outrage from my point of view. And all I can say is find another place for the gas station. As we all know, it's a historical accident that the DPW is where it's located. That was a factory, the Hodgson prefab housing factory. Times change. That closed up. I think it was bought by the town in the 1960s. Why we didn't get rid of it and start building a retail center there and also taking better care of our water. And again, the center of town has a lot of water. It makes zero sense for me as we're quote unquote envisioning the town center of Dover to have a massive DPW in the center of town. So we've got to rethink this whole thing, in my opinion. And I agree with Chris Benson about people turning out at town meeting and defeating this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Justine. No, I appreciate your comments. You and I have spoken extensively, and I appreciate your history you provide on the mobile gas station spill, those many years ago. I just think it's important to note that, that concern, I understand. Again, if there was a spill much further away at the mobile station, certainly even at the current location, let alone the newest location, is a potential concern. And I think that, frankly, I think potentially supporting this newest technology, these new tanks that are designed to not leak and have leak protection. It's a much better system and much better preventative system than we have in place today. And if, again, without these new tanks, we live with our current existing tanks, which I think pose some of the risks that you're concerned about. So again, I appreciate your concern. As I said, I always appreciate speaking with you about these issues, but I do think there's an argument to be made that improving the technology is a really good step to prevent some of those concerns and having something like that ever happen again, because I do understand how terrible that was for a very, very long time, and still, the community still deals with that. So I do appreciate that. Nicole has her hand up again. Nicole. Go ahead.
Yes, I would like to just make a comment that the groundwater storm drains, the new ones that you installed a couple of years ago, are very close to these tanks. Those flow directly into the conservation land next door. So you're moving it way closer to these groundwater, these storm drains. So that has not been addressed. I know you said you're going to put a magnetic cover over it manually. When there's a snowstorm, you can't see that. It's not airtight. You are directly next to a gas station that flows into 5 acres of conservation land, surrounded by homes, surrounded by wells. It is a reality that fluids could leak directly into the conservation land. I know you have an answer for it and you're going to appreciate it, but that is the reality. The trees are dead that are next to the town yard. It is due from the salt that is running off. I live right next to it. I have a bird's eye view of this. It is extremely crowded back there during a snowstorm. I mean, during the blizzards this year, you couldn't see. You're putting a gas station smack where these giant trucks are backing up and they cannot see. I am not hearing the answers. You're dismissing our questions. There needs to be more study done on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. I feel like I can't say I appreciate your question because you called me out on that, but I do appreciate it. And again, I as I speak with Justine about this issue, the spill from the mobile station, which is significantly further away, made it into those same lands that you're concerned about, and that is true. If there was a leak from the existing location, it would make it into that same system and making it into this land. And yes, in this new location, it would do the same. I appreciate it, but I don't believe the distance changes that. If there is a leak, it makes it into the same location. And I think the need for these new tanks with this newest technology is important for that very reason. But again, I do appreciate sincerely your comments. Everett?
I want to go back to the noise pollution piece of it. In my comment about how this is going to greatly increase the traffic of trucks and massive vehicles coming right behind our houses within feet, and having just this 8-foot wooden fence as the barrier between the truck noise and our houses. Right now, when a truck comes through the back of our house, right on that strip of pavement, it literally rumbles the whole house. If our windows are open, it startles everyone. And now this is going to be coming more often. I know I do appreciate that you took the time to think about, all right, let's make sure that these trucks that are coming in and out, except for an emergency situation, are going to have to abide by DPW hours. But what are those hours? That's my question one, because I feel like DPW hours start really early in the morning, like 6 a.m. We've heard trucks out there as early as that. So what are the hours that you'll have them operate? And then my second question is, why isn't there any sort of remediation built into your plan to reduce the noise pollution for the abutters that are going to be incurring this extra noise pollution and obviously the fume pollution from these vehicles, but particularly the noise pollution. Why don't you have a plan in place if you're going to invest this many millions of dollars into this brand new gas station? Why not also add some money and improve or reduce the noise pollution that's going to be coming in from all these extra vehicles going right behind our houses? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'm not exactly sure what the steps we could take to reduce the noise pollution. Again, and I appreciate you said it, that you appreciate, trying to limit the hours. I think generally, maybe a little earlier, I think generally DPW operates 7 to 3, or maybe a little bit earlier to 3, but they do close
30 to 3:30 are operating, and then till 12:30 on Fridays.
On Friday, yeah. But again, we could work on setting those hours, a little later. That's not necessarily set in stone. That was just something that we thought would help alleviate that. Wouldn't have vehicles fueling up in the evening or on the weekends, again, outside of case of emergency. And again, we'll continue to look at that and are welcome to any other suggestions that we could implement to try to alleviate some of those concerns. So we've reached our hour mark. So I just want to give one more call if there's any additional questions. And again, this will be posted online. And it looks like we have one more from Kristen Daly Bartlett again. Go ahead, Kristen.
Hey, I just want to introduce myself to Kevin, who I don't know, but I will say, I'm sorry that you're dealing with this, and I'm sorry that you're getting all this feedback from us, and I'm sorry that this is my first time meeting you. But could you provide any suggestions, given that this is your area of expertise? And can you speak to maybe any possible alternative or efforts to work with us? Thanks.
Again, this process was started in June of 2023, and there's been a magnitude of public engagement, and at every step of that way, we looked at and analyzed that feedback. As Michael already alluded to, this has been approved the past 2 years from Capital and Warrant Committee and was deferred last year because of the zoning language. So that kind of opportunity, and we just bid the project last week, so we definitively have a cost on it. So that the, I guess, availability to make those changes is surpassed.
Yeah, and I think Kristen, just to give a little more to Kevin's response, I think, at the end of the day, the various town boards that have supported this project generally feel this is the appropriate location. There are, obviously we hear today, there are larger concerns that perhaps, as far as an extreme of this isn't the right site to even have the DPW yard. Regardless of how it came into existence, it is today the DPW yard. It is where the majority of our vehicles are located. It's where the majority of our operations exist. It is in close proximity to our public safety facility. So, from an operational perspective, we do think this does make sense, and that's why we are bringing it forward. By no means does that mean I'm sorry that some members tonight feel this way, not dismissing your concerns. We do understand them, but we still do think this is the most appropriate location within the border of Dover to house this fuel island operation. We do think it makes the most sense. And again, as we said, you have a voice. I appreciate using it tonight, and you will have a voice and a vote specifically, both at town meeting and the ballot, if you do disagree with this current suggestion. And lastly, what Kevin's referring to is it's late in terms of the infrastructure that could be installed. The project has been bid, so in terms of the actual work, but we are very willing to work with the butters and other people should this project move forward. If there are other ways that we could help mitigate the impact, we are more than willing to consider that. Whether it is things that have no cost, like ensuring that the fueling operations are during business hours and things like that. And then even in the future, if there are things that have a cost, again, just like this, that could go back to town meeting and seek additional funding to implement some of those measures that might help remediate some of the concern. But certainly the project as it is today has been bid, and we don't have that ability in this request, but we certainly could look at that going forward. So I hope that helps answer. Kristen has her hand up again. I think it's up again.
I'm sorry. It was left up, but I was just going to respond to that. Like, I get it. Like, I came in late, but if we're going to work together, and if it's ultimately going to be here, although I don't think you're going to get it passed this time, given the uproar, work with the community and plant 100 trees, block off the noise and sound, do things for the abutters, assure the people that had the experience before, the safety measures. I don't think anyone's buying those mats. You're going to have to work on that. But I get where you're coming from, but I just learned of it. So my reactions are a little bit new and unpolished. But if it's where it doesn't go long-term in the center of town, if we're going to ever have a village, but these are real concerns and they all are valid. Yours are and the communities are. So there has to be concessions. And I will give you the feedback. It doesn't sound like you want to work with us. It sounds like you just want to do it. And that's a lot of money for us too. We just got done Carroll. And that's on our part to get involved as well. So thank you very much for the time. Look forward to seeing you guys at town meeting. Sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you for the comments. Yep. The last comment I just want to mention, and Mary Crane, and I apologize that it looks like I might have missed one of your questions. One was, where does one go to see the visuals? So we do have a dedicated website, and when we share, I believe it's on the website now, the main page where the advertisement for this info session is, but when we share the recording, we'll have a direct link, but you can navigate it by going to the planning board and looking under past projects, and you'll see the Fuel Island project, and you'll see a history there of various plans, renderings, documents, etc. And then Mary also asked, what is the cost to share such a station with Sherborne or another abutting town? And so again, there's no, we didn't research a cost for that, because when we reached out to those other communities, they declined to participate with us in sharing of those sort of resources. And the reason is, and I think Kevin went over this a little bit, is one is, while these tanks are certainly large, I don't mean to dismiss it, they're not as large as like a commercial gas station. So oftentimes communities are very concerned about running out of gas and diesel during a long-term blizzard or snowstorm or hurricane. So communities are concerned that they want to make sure they have enough for themselves, and they don't have the capacity to share with other towns. And I think really a great example of this, and if I can share this, is that if a town were to reach out to us and ask if they could share our facility, we would say no for the same reason. Oftentimes before a large storm, we make sure all the trucks are filled up and then get a delivery, just to make sure that we're in good shape for the duration of that storm, and if there's any delivery days following a large storm. So the fuel islands like this that are installed at all of our surrounding communities are of a similar size, and they just don't have the capacity to serve multiple communities. That's not the way they're designed. And again, we would have to give the same answer should a community come asking us for help. Okay, so I think that's our time for tonight. We're a little over. I appreciate your patience. And again, please attend town meeting next Monday, May 4th, 7 o'clock at Dover Sherborne Regional High School. And then again, our annual town election is on Monday, May 18th. So appreciate you being here. Thank you for your time. I hope this was helpful. And again, the recording will be made available on our website. Have a good night.